That's good. Assalamu alaikum. This is Maruf, and welcome to the Entrepreneurs podcast. Today, I have a special guest from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, exactly 12 hours. On the other side, we have a difference. We've known each other for a while. Before I talk too much, I'm going to ask him to briefly introduce himself. Then we're going to dive into his life story. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, Umar. Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Walaikum salam, Maruf. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. Why don't you start, brother? Tell us briefly about you. Don't tell too much because we're going to dive into your story, but tell us highlights of what you do and who you are, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. I guess in terms of background, I've been an entrepreneur all my adult life since the age of 18 until today. I'm originally Singaporean, so I spent a bulk of my entrepreneurship journey outside of Singapore, mainly in Indonesia, in Malaysia, a little bit in the GCC. Today, most of my time and focus and attention is on Hasan.VC, which is a brand that we launched about a year ago, early 2024. Prior to that, for more than 10 years, slightly more than 10 years, my focus has been on Islamic investments, Halal investments, specifically through fintech platforms in various parts of the world. So I guess that's, in a nutshell, that's where I am today, and that's a little bit about my background.
Sounds good. Why don't we start with the first time we met each other? Do you remember that moment? I was just trying to remember where I met you first time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Umar. I think it was in Dubai, maybe 2017 or 18. It must have been.
Probably, yeah, around 2017, around there, yeah.
That's good. I remember you seeing in the hall, and you were asking something. I gotta remember what you were asking. You were asking about some Muslim entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs and Muslim entrepreneurship, something like that. I gotta remember exactly. But this is my first early memory to see you in person. I think it was in Dubai, if I remember correctly. There used to be like global Islamic economy summits, maybe either that or some kind of thing. At that time, do you remember at that time if you were running Ethis at that time, or you don't? If you remember,
it was definitely Ethis, but Ethis is like an overarching brand. It's an umbrella, right? It's a venture builder technically. So within Ethis, we have different entities and different programs. So if you remember, you mentioned something about a woman in tech. We did have a platform long time ago called MuslimWomanTech.com.
That's what you were asking, probably me. Yeah, about those
maybe, yeah. That unfortunately didn't last too long. It was about a year and a half. We were experimenting. We did some good things, but yeah, the brand faded away back then.
That's what happens sometimes at the business. But that's good. Now we know we're first with each other. I want to take us way back. So one of the questions I usually ask the guest is, I want them to start with their, right now, correct me if I'm wrong. So how old are you? Probably you're in 30s, 40s, 40s, 30s. I don't know where you are.
Early 40s, yeah.
Early 40s. I am the same. So we are almost the same age. However, when we track back, right, to where we end up today, I want you to go back to your childhood. Because there are a lot of, inshallah, there are a lot of Muslim entrepreneurs, professionals, and maybe, future Muslim leaders of Ummah watching this even after we are gone. We don't know. And I want them to, because a lot of people look at you today, or a lot of established entrepreneurs, and say, you know what, they are far too away from me. I cannot reach out. I cannot do that. We want them to take back to your childhood and say, how was it like if you were 20 years younger, if you were 30 years younger? How do we see the young Umar growing up? It could be, I don't know, probably you grew up in Singapore and other places. What were the things you would say to yourself? Or what would we expect to see? Did you know from the young age you're going to do what you know? Was everything clear to you? You were more like an entrepreneur type guy, or you were something else? So as you can see, it's a very open-ended question. I want you to take us back to earlier parts of your life and walk us back slowly, because this podcast is about your backstory, not where you are today, but how it started, inshallah.
Sure. All right. So I guess I never really thought about what I wanted to become when I grew up back when I was younger. One thing for sure is that, alhamdulillah, I come from a good, I would say, relatively good family background. We're not wealthy people or anything like that. Big family. I have six other siblings, so there's seven of us. Uh, my dad and mom, they got married when they were young, when they were still in university. And growing up, I know we were not, in terms of material possessions and so on, we were not very comfortable because they were still studying. My mom, I think, gave birth to me when she was just after she dropped out of university, because she had my elder brother. So early on, we were quite. I guess the family was quite independent. Like my parents were, they sort of made things work, even though there wasn't much. Right. So I think that's something that I remember, that the frugality in that sense of the lifestyle that we had, where we were not struggling or anything, but I remember that my parents were very careful with how they spend money, in the sense that they are very concerned about wastage, about buying things that you don't need, and things like that, right? So that's something that stuck with me. And then everybody in Singapore is a hyper competitive environment. So we're all just put into school and pushed to study, and some people can't take it, some people do very well. Whichever way it is, it's a very challenging, competitive environment, right? So for myself, I guess I did see that I could not really fit into the mold so well. Yeah.
Mhm.
My cat is here. If you can hear her, I hope you don't mind. She's wondering why I'm up
No,
so early.
it's good. It's good. It's good. It's all good.
Yes.
Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah. So I I knew back then that I couldn't really, or didn't really fit in to what was expected of me, in terms of going to school, following the
Mhm.
programs, doing my homework, even stuff like that. I struggled. I remember in college, sometimes this is not a good example, right? But when I enter a new
That's
class,
okay, because a lot of people feel like that. A lot of people feel like that. They don't fit in. That's okay.
yeah, yeah, and I remember something quite strange, where when I was in college, or before that, in the college secondary school, um, I would go into class sometimes, especially for classes that topics that I don't like, subjects that I don't like. I would come in with the intention to find a way for the teacher to give up on me, so that I wouldn't be disturbed. I can do whatever I want, right? So that was what I was like earlier on. Yeah,
So here's the question. A lot of youth who may listen to the podcast, one of the challenges, recurring questions, is that they're not sure what to choose. Like, should I be a doctor? Should I be engineer? Should I be this and that? When you were growing up, like you mentioned college, what did you study? And that study was like, you make a decision and knowing it's exactly what I'm gonna do, or you just you know went with the
yeah.
flow?
It was
How
just,
was
yeah.
it?
I guess Allah Subhanahu wa Taala opened up the path for me. In secondary school, the O levels, I was taking triple science. I had biology,
Mm.
chemistry, physics, right? Maths, A maths, advanced maths. Yeah. Then when I went to college, although I did okay, um, my family were all educators, right? All
Mm.
my siblings today, I mean, for many years have been educators, right? So my parents are also educators. So the study environment at home is good, although I didn't fit in school. So I still scrape by to get into good institutions and so on.
Mm.
When I
I
got into
see.
college, I decided to try something else. I took literature, English literature.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I felt that let's just do something that's not so rigid. And it turned out to be my only A, I think, in A levels. Yeah, so then I went to university, and university I took. Sorry, let me just take a step back. In Singapore, we have national service for
Mhm.
males. right? Unless the government really doesn't trust you or doesn't like you, then all males go to national service for 2 years, two and a
Which is
half,
army.
army or police or
Okay.
firefighter, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Mm.
So that actually was a significant. So when I was in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Right. I just thought I'll go university and just study some arts subject. Right. Then I went to national service, and that's where I found that realized that I had certain skills.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was put in the military, which is very rigid and not generally something that would fit my style. But I excelled. I told myself I'm going to not waste my time here. I'll do the best I can. And, I became very fit and very strong and very fast. And I did well in the army. I was in the army for 3 months.
Mm.
And then they shifted me to the police, where I became an inspector. So
I never knew this part of your life. Honestly, I'm just writing down, taking notes.
yeah, so it's a very rare thing, like really top performers get selected to be senior officials in senior officers in the national service. And what I got was, they call it NSPI, National Service Police Inspector. It was very rare. A lot of people wanted to get it. Alhamdulillah, I got it. We wanted because, as a policeman, you're in the real world as compared to in the military, you're fighting the jungle against imaginary enemies, right? So Alhamdulillah, I got into one of the major police centers in Singapore, and I was in the operations department. So at the age of 18, I was planning and organizing together, of course, with the senior people, raids, to various night establishments in Singapore, in Orchard Road, and so on. And I was also handling manpower, I was handling people. So at the age of 18, I had to handle people who are in their 40s.
Age of 18.
18, yeah, 18. Because my head who was above me was really, really good, and he taught me a lot. And when he left, someone came in who knew very little, and that person relied on me to do a lot of things, right? So although I was in national service, I was given a lot
You
of
gain a lot of responsibility at young age then.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I had good lifestyle, I had good balance, and on the side, I started doing business. Yeah, so that's how.
That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to talk about as well. So you see, I had no idea before talking to you. This is the way usually I do interviews, like very open-ended. And I had no idea you went to military service, then army, and inspector. Alhamdulillah, it's good to know. So tell me now where you're saying, like, then on the side, you said to do some businesses. Like, question is, I guess, a lot of people's mind is, look, if you're a police inspector, you already have a lot of things in your hands. You're young, you're ambitious. Why bother and create another business on the side? Like, was it because of the money, or was it something else not fulfilling internally? Your soul wanted something else.
Yeah, I mean, I always had this desire, right, the ambition to do things that make a difference. And I mean, things that make a difference can be anything, right? So just before I went to the police force, before I was selected, I actually, for some reason, there was a call for submissions, and for some reason, I applied to be a Air Force pilot, right? Which is a very tough thing to get. And alhamdulillah, I went through all the way to the final interviews, but I did not get it, right? I mean, now I know it's not so easy to get for certain demographics of people in a country like Singapore. And that was a blessing. I don't know what I would be like if I were an Air Force pilot. So while I was in national service, basically I had some time in my hands, right?
Okay.
I had a little bit of cash because my national service allowance was better than others, so I saved up. And I think the itch was always there to do something on my own. And I did two different things when I was 18. One was together with two of my buddies who are still, alhamdulillah, friends today. And we did a few businesses together over the years. We started a business based on our passion at that time. Young guys, we were interested in cars, sporty cars, right? And this was 25 years ago. So 25 years ago, we had a some kind of an e-commerce platform to help modify. Basically, cars, you have the body kit, the spoilers and the wings and all that, right? So
like it's called tuning, isn't it? It's called tuning, right?
yeah, we don't touch the engine because we don't know anything about it. It's just
Oh,
the add-ons on the body to
I
make it
see.
look sporty, right? The wing behind and all that.
Nice.
So we started that company. It was called Project Mayhem, right? Yeah, back then it sounded very cool, and it was quite cool. So Alhamdulillah, we did that on the side. It was very interesting. I learned a lot. We made some income. We were basically an early form of e-commerce platform back in Singapore at the time. Yeah, so that's how it started. And one thing led to another. I was exposed to different things. And after national service, I went to university. Oh, before that, I given that I had this interest in business that emerged, right? I then appealed to the university to go to business school, which I did not qualify for because of my results. But Alhamdulillah,
Okay.
I managed to convince the school, the university. So I
Yeah,
got
good enough.
yeah, I got into National University Singapore Business School, which is one of the top global schools. I did not last there. I was there for a year. In that year, I really felt very restless in school because business was running, and here I was sitting down in lecture rooms and so on, right? So yeah, I did not complete my university, and I left, and I went to do business full time after a year.
So I was reading one of your posts on LinkedIn where you mentioned this car business as well, then some other businesses. The reason, if you don't mind, if you can highlight those posts and from the post to businesses again, is that a lot of young entrepreneurs, especially Muslim entrepreneurs, they're coming into the field of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
On social media, we have this false image of sometimes, especially mass media shows, hey, look, this guy was great and lucky, overnight success, everything worked out, but and I know, in reality, that's not how it works. Entrepreneurs fail a lot of time. Even the same entrepreneur, a lot of times, fail a lot of things. And one thing works out, and they focus on that because no one wants to look at the failures. But I think there's a lot of lesson there. And if you don't show the full picture, I believe, it's disservice to us and to the truth and to the young audience as well, because if they see that what it takes to build something, how many times you have to fail before you do something else, before you succeed, and I think that's much more a realistic view, and they are more patient. If it doesn't work, they feel like it. So if you don't mind, Omar, tell us some of those businesses, like car business you mentioned, other businesses, which work, which did not. And then we will go on to Ethis, then we'll go on, inshallah, to Hasan.VC and what you guys are doing, if you don't mind. I think this is important. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're right? Whatever we see online is highly, very much sometimes very superficial, even misleading, right? But one thing is, I may disagree also a little bit with what you said. I have come across many people who are literally overnight successes, right? That means they didn't try much, they didn't do much, and suddenly they made it, right? However, I think, right? I mean, I don't track all of them, but I think for quite a number of them, when you go up fast, you sort of go down fast as well.
Fast, yeah.
Because it's like so easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them risk, right? They just set up something and it boom. But when at some point there typically would be challenges, and if you do not go through hardship, then things can tend to be lost quite fast. Yeah. So that's why
As they say,
yeah.
As they say, it's not about how much money you get to make, but how much you get to keep, right?
Yeah.
Making and keeping are two different things.
I mean, making money, it's something that there are many ways to make money. I think as an entrepreneur, the objective of making money, of course, is there to find a source of sustenance and, to give a comfortable life to your family, to be able to have more so you can give back and so on. That part is definitely there. But I really don't believe that money is the motivation for true entrepreneurs, right? It's part of it, right? It's definitely part of it, because you're doing something commercial. But it's more of wanting to build, to really build something. Yeah. So when I shared those stories on LinkedIn, Alhamdulillah, quite good, traction. It's especially because of my work in Hasan.VC, where we work with a lot of early stage founders, right? In every cohort, we have a virtual accelerator program, it's like 30 to 40 people. And some of them are senior, but most of them are young. And the energy, you can see that energy, right? That they are so into the business, they're so passionate about it. They want to conquer the world, and we know it can be done, but at the same time, we also know that there are a lot of bumps along the way, right? And so right now I put on, when I speak to these startups and meet them, I put on my VC hat, right? So and I remember back then when I first met VCs, there was a little bit of that gap between entrepreneurs and VCs. Like you're the investor, I'm the one looking for money, that kind of thing. But I wanted to make it clear to the founders that I am a founder first and foremost. Along the way, I was given the responsibility to be an investor, the opportunity to be an investor. Not my money, right? Like we are a fund manager. We have others putting money with us. And in our case, that money also from individuals, right? From the ummah, from the people. So I think telling those stories of what I went through in the past, the ups and downs, especially the downs, very, very important, right? And
Absolutely.
a lot of the entrepreneurs appreciate reading such stories, right? So that they can see, there are all these ups and downs, there are all these challenges that will come, that do come, and that you can overcome it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So now we are just started discussing the Hasan.VC. I want to, if you like, I remember you from the days when we had discussion. You remember Ethis, etc. From that point of view, and there was also platform Global Sadaqah, I think, right? There was a charity platform.
Yes.
What inspired you to go from there? I'm sure Ethis, as you said, it's still venture builder, it's still there. But now, as you mentioned earlier in the talk, now your focus is on Hasan.VC. What shifted and what kind of inspired you to focus on that fully these days? And so if you don't mind sharing the story briefly, then we can go to discussing some of the questions as well.
Sure. I guess there are two parts to it, and both go back to responsibility, or I guess responsibility and opportunity at the same time, right? So when Ethis first started in Singapore in 2014, early 2014, late 2013, we were born to serve Muslims who were looking for halal investments, right? Because in Singapore we didn't have many or any options. That's how we started, and that was the very reason for our existence, right? To help Muslims invest. Prior to that, I had lost a previous business that was doing well. And from there I discovered Islamic finance, right? There's the blessing behind the so-called bad things that happen. And so when I found Islamic finance, I told myself, this is what I've been looking for. This is the reason why I've been born an entrepreneur. I'm going to go do something about this, right? Because it was mind-blowing to me that something so wonderful, so powerful, so amazing was just not there, right? In Singapore, at least at that time. Yeah. So that's how the whole thing started. So Ethis was born to solve that. Now, as we progressed, we realized that we were an accidental pioneer, right? I thought, we were just starting in Singapore, we were new, but when very quickly we were invited to different seminars, talks, conferences around the world, and that's where I met you as well, right? I remember in the first year, I was invited to go to Dubai, to Scotland, to different parts of the world. India, Australia, all these kind of countries, right? And before that, I never had this kind of opportunity to travel the world. So, Ethis just started growing on its own. The Islamic finance industry was very excited about what we were doing. Turned out that we were doing something that was like very pure, sort of purer than what was existing in the market. So it was just a company, but as we grew, we realized that there was so much opportunity and there were so many invitations to set up overseas. That's why we decided, let's set up a venture builder. And this venture builder would then launch new Ethis platforms, right? And basically, we were focused on alternative investment platforms, crowdfunding, crowd investment, alternative investments, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I see.
So that's how it started, and um, we spent a lot of many years. I mean, for those fintech entrepreneurs watching, regulations are something that I really underestimated. I knew licenses were important and difficult to get and expensive, but yeah, it really took up most of our time, effort, and money for many years
Mhm.
dealing with regulators, getting licenses, and all that, right? So there's the Ethis part. Of course, there's a lot of stories there. And Hassan is technically still part of Ethis, right? It's born out of Ethis.
Yeah.
It's like a spin-off. It's a subsidiary of Ethis. And how Hassan came to be was we still have our angel investor group. So I think you were asking me, right, what led me to continue doing all these things. So one was the opportunity, the fact that there are
Mhm.
all these opportunities that are aligned with our mission, right? So our mission was to help Singaporeans, then it expanded to helping everyone, helping humanity get into Islamic finance, or to provide Islamic financial products, investment products for the underserved, for SMEs, for startups, right? Now, we ourselves went through that challenge where we did speak to VCs, right? We didn't have interest from VCs, we didn't have interest from family offices and all that. But along, in this 10-year journey, our investments came from people, came from angels, right? We survived and thrived over 10 plus years purely from angel investment, right? And we have licenses in 4 countries, and we also had licenses in a few other countries that we let go of. Typically, to get this kind of license in a new market, you'll need to raise at least 5 million, 10 million kind of thing, right? Our competitors, our friends who exist in the market with licenses, they've raised 20 million, 50 million, 80 million, 100 million, right? Some more. So,
Mhm.
that I think is one thing that affects entrepreneurs, right? You see people doing the same thing, raising 50 million, 100 million, right? For us, lifetime from angels only in bits and pieces, we raised about $4 million. So we were very, I guess you can say, capital efficient as Ethis, right? Not easy, and not by choice, right? We would have loved to have more money, but we saw that there's this challenge where um, it's difficult to find institutional investors in this space, and
Mhm.
especially those who understand or care about what we do, right? So we survived and thrived again with angels, and that is actually a very key point where there were many instances where there are various businesses that didn't work out, or business lines that didn't work out, but because this we had raised funds from people who believed in us, you know, I also don't want to let them down, right?
Mhm.
So that's where it helped also to push us through various tough times and tough circumstances, because I didn't want to lose the faith and the trust of the investors who have put money in, because they are individuals, right? Not to say that you can lose institutional money. Yeah, either way, money is amanah, but
Yeah.
that personal bond with these individuals is there, and we want to prove that our business and Islamic business, halal finance business, can make it.
I see. So the way I understood when the Ethis started, right? Ethis was more like you could invest like a real estate, or much more like a grant. So much more this kind of assets, right? You can invest,
Yeah,
you can get a return. But Hassan is more like a startup
correct.
VC. You would say that, right? Not like the assets like the grants and real estate, but it's different. So that's a bit quite shift, and it also with that comes also the risk levels go up, right? It's not the ground, etc. My question for you would be, Hassan, when was the Hassan came into operation? Like, was it a year ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah,
Just
it was
just walk us
early.
through and some numbers, if you don't mind.
So Hassan actually is an evolution of our angel group, right? So we
Okay.
had angels invest in us,
Mhm.
and 5 years ago, that group of investors started pulling in their friends, and we started investing in other startups, right? So we've
Mhm.
been investing in startups actually for 6 years now. The Hasan.VC brand came about early last year.
Mm.
Technically, middle of the year, then it was properly registered as a fund. So we are less than a year old. But the activity that we have been doing in investing and supporting startups has been, been there for about 6 years. So it is a shift, right? Investing in real estate, investing in short-term SME projects, which is mainly what we're doing. Small
Yep.
business financing, right? That's mainly what we've done. We've funded more than 1,000 small businesses, mainly in Indonesia. Um, Jumping to startups is very different, very,
Yep.
very different. But Alhamdulillah, I see two things, right? One is, at the end of the day, we want to circulate funds in a way that's halal, such that it brings benefit to society, right?
Mm.
And bringing benefit to society is embedded within doing something as in a halal way, right? Naturally, you will bring benefit. Yeah. So that's one thing we've always had as our North Star, right? We want to circulate funds, help people move money from people to people, from people to business, from business to business, right? And the other one was, what kind of impact can we make? So when we invest in real estate, that's great, right? Investors like it. When you invest in SMEs, small businesses, that's good as well. You support the economy. But the big gap, like even until today, in the Muslim world, is tech, is startups,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
As I was doing fintech, I found and I saw a lot of really top tier Muslim talent around the world, but they were almost always workers, not the owners, right?
Mm.
And whenever Muslim entrepreneurs would start their business, like what I did, what you did, it's very difficult to find investors from our own community. I think that's the experience that I had. I know some countries are different. I heard, for example, in Turkey, in South Africa, the Muslim community is more entrepreneurial, right? But in this part of the world, we are consumers and politicians, right? That's
I
it.
see.
The business world is dominated by non.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
the, similar to what we did when Ethis started was to solve our own problem, right? Hasan.VC was born so that we can help others, a lot in their path, because we face a lot of difficulties in that path, and we wanted to help those going through the same journey.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, would you say now the whole group's focusing on the tech startups in the Muslim space rather than what you used to do before, or you are doing both still?
Yeah, we're doing both. So we have
Okay.
our online SME financing platform in Indonesia that's running. We're just about to, we've already announced it, like soft announcements and so on, but we are just about to launch, inshallah, in Turkey, right? We got a capital market investment license there. Yeah, so
Wonderful.
the rest are running. There are people running these things, there are co-founders and so on. But my personal focus is more so on Hasan.VC, and
Yes.
also working at the group level with all the different leaders.
Sounds good. So look, this is one of my passions, like exactly what you're working on the startups, especially in the Muslim space that are my passion areas as well. So this is where we have something in common, alhamdulillah. Tell me about, it's been a year. Tell us about your progress. What have you learned? How many startups in the cohort? How many of them got funded? And tell us some stories, failure
Yeah,
stories, success stories. We all want to hear.
putting on the VC hat and meeting founders and working with them, and really it's I realized that although I've had 20 plus years as an entrepreneur, going through so much, meeting so many people, doing so many things, running so many programs and projects and whatnot, because I have the unique benefit of running a venture builder where there are many different companies in one, right? I realized that I know so little, and there's so much going on that if I were just doing my business and not a VC, I would not see, I would not know,
You're
right?
exposed now. You're exposed to everything.
Yeah, I mean, mashallah, it's incredible. You see, for example, startups running a specific concept and they're doing revenue of a few million, right? And I'm like, how do you do that? Right? And I wouldn't be able to do it, maybe, right? And then you see the ideas that are being crafted, they're being brought to life. Really, the level of innovation the talent at building something is incredible, right? In the Ummah, it's really incredible. It's very much unlocked, right? It's still in a box, but that box is starting to open up, right? And especially in the world today, right, where there's, can call it shifting sentiment, geopolitics. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Alhamdulillah, there is that spark in a lot of people, right? Whether they are the
It's
builders,
awakening into
awakening.
this.
Yeah, I mean that's a great word. So I mean the time is now, and it's part of it is to provide an alternative that's halal. But I see that. Let me give you another example. When people ask me, how do you come up with the idea of Ethis, right? How do you think about it? I tell them it's not my idea, right? This is Islamic finance is there, right? I just try to bring it to life, right? It's from Quran and Hadith, right? It's not from my brain, right? It's not my invention. It's there. Like how we are supposed to do business is there in our religion, right? How we're supposed to serve humanity is there in our religion. So our challenge is to manifest that in this world, and there's a lot of lost human history, Islamic history where Islam did lead the world, you know. So now back to Hasan.VC and the startups. In terms of stories, I guess I can just say that I'm blown away sometimes, right, by what startups do. And for example, there's a Quran app. I think you've probably heard of Qara'a.
Correct.
Invested in them. They're very Indonesian focused right now. It's available outside, but not so optimized. MashaAllah, Indonesia, they have close to 1 million monthly active users, and they reached that point bootstrap, right, without raising money. And when I first met him, and someone told me about some VC gathering in Indonesia, Jakarta, and I shared it with him, and he went, and I asked him how it was. He said, well, I was there talking to people about my Quran app, and they were drinking beer, right? I mean, because
it's so wrong. It's so wrong. It doesn't make sense.
So he said after a while, I really felt out of place because we didn't know there was going to be alcohol there. It's a VC gathering, right? So I mean, this my point back to the earlier point, right? That I see today a lot of stories of startups and founders that reached a good level of success or traction without raising money or with raising very little money, right? Yesterday I had a conversation with a founder that another founder introduced me to. He's been running his business for 8 years in Malaysia, and they never raise funds, and they are serving big clients. They're doing very well as a tech startup. So this is something that's very important. I want to stress on this here. The VC world was very artificially inflated, especially in North America, in the US, during the pandemic boom and before that, right? And that doesn't make sense. I have good board members, and in that period, when we obviously were also trying to raise funds, one of the senior board members, he told me, Umar, I think what you guys are doing just doesn't make sense. You're not making profits, and you want to raise money, right? And I'm like, but that's how startups work, and then and that's how this works. I mean, he's an elderly man. Of course, I respect him, but I told him that's how it works. But that's not how it works. Right? Business is business. You got to make money. You got to be sustainable, right? If you can't do what he likes to tell me is, you can't do good if you yourself are not doing well. It's very difficult, right? If we are doing well, then we can do a lot of good. So definitely, startup investing, fundraising. At some point in time, probably there'll be a need or there'll be a justification to raise funds, right? For early stage, maybe you need a little bit of a kicker, a catalyst to start. But you can do a lot, and I feel it makes you a stronger founder, a stronger startup, a stronger business if you're forced to do it with fewer resources, right? Throwing money at it just makes you lazy and bootstrapping forces you to be a good entrepreneur.
So this is an amazing point in time. I'm going to ask you the question, which I don't know, and the first time I heard it is from you guys. In the startup world, we talk about unicorns, and I think you are somebody, I think, from the part of the world mentioning, what about camels, right, versus unicorns? Why don't you explain that to our audience yourself in your own words? What is the difference?
You're a camel, brother.
We
Yeah,
all
okay.
camels. We all camels.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
I mean, the idea of the whole mindset behind VC, which the basis of it is unicorns, right? And it's still sexy today, right? You go to whether it's governments or big institutions or the public, you talk about unicorns, everybody's like, wow, unicorn, right? You want to be a unicorn. I want to be a unicorn. But that mindset, I feel, is what is the problem. Uh, the VC mindset, when there was too much money in the market, when I say VC mindset, it almost always starts from Silicon Valley, and the rest of the world sort of copies it, right? And that in itself is something that doesn't make sense. But we don't have time to go into that. But yeah, that VC mindset is that you look for that one big outlier or that few big outliers, the outsized returns, and everybody else in the portfolio sort of doesn't matter, right? Seen that firsthand, where if you're not on track to be a unicorn, it doesn't matter what happened to you, right? Some VCs are still nice and supportive, some VCs don't care,
They don't care. That's right.
Either way, you don't matter to the fund, right? Because you're not on track to be a
So
unicorn.
their focus is the return. They don't care
Right.
about most of them anything else.
Yeah. And the return in that concept comes from the unicorn, right? Everybody else can lose 100% of the money, it doesn't matter. Now, that mindset is dangerous for founders and dangerous for the ecosystem. Because if you set up with the idea that the investors give me money and they know that there's a higher chance of me failing than not, and when things get tough, you close down, right? So I've seen a lot of founders who were like that at that time, right? Serial entrepreneurs, so called, right? There's this strange thing where my business failed. I mean that particular business may have failed, and then the founder can raise funds again because he was already a funded founder in the past, right? That gives him an extra shine, right? And that's fine because maybe he learned a lot. But I see a lot of founders who abuse this mindset, So today that has shifted, right? When you and especially as Muslims, when you get an investment, it's an amanah. Right? It's an amanah not only to the people who give you money, but to everybody else around you. You have taken up a leadership role that will be difficult, and so you better be prepared to go through that journey, right? So I feel this is a very, very critical thing. And when we talk about camels, I realized today that there are other articles talking about camel startups as well. But I guess at that time it was an original idea here. We were thinking of what's a good animal that reflects a good startup, and then we had the idea of a camel. And when I started researching into camels, I realized, mashallah, camels are much more amazing than I knew, than I ever knew, right? Allah SWT gave these animals incredible features to allow them to survive.
Durability.
Yeah, amazing, man, mashallah. So and that strengthened our thinking, right? So it's really about being smart with how you spend, very important, being smart at how you spend, being very thoughtful on your scope and focus, right? There's a balance between doing too many things and not experimenting enough, right? And we see that this resilience is what really, really matters, because at the end of the day, we know our success and our risk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our job is to try our best and put in the right effort, right? So putting the right effort includes going through tough times, because I know, we all know that when we sign up to do something good, there's going to be challenges, right?
Yeah.
I mean, life,
Otherwise, everybody would do it.
it's not worth doing if it's too easy in that sense, right? But yeah,
everybody would do it. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So that's the whole thing. So why don't we do this, Umar? Why don't you explain? Because I wanna also promote it, the Hasan.VC, because I believe what you guys do. Hasan means good, right? So it's a good VC with a good intention, inshallah. So tell potential, listeners and watchers who might be a potential, inshallah, one of the members of the Hasan.VC, tell us like what you are looking for and how they apply, and how does the whole thing work. If you don't mind, just walk through so people learn more. And we'll also share the URL, inshallah, right? They will come and discover about what you guys do.
Sure. So our URL is very easy, Hasan.VC, Hasan. Hassan, the word Hassan is originally an acronym, Halal Super Angels. right? Hassan.
Oh, Hassan, Halal Super Angels. I did not know that. See, I was thinking it's good. It's good. Hassan
Yeah,
and Hussein, the
and
two
Hassan means good.
grandsons. The
Yeah, it means
yeah,
good.
yeah. Hassan is good.
But it started from the angel group, right? So there are two entities within Hassan. One is a VC fund, right, which is set up offshore Malaysia in Labuan, and then there is the Accelerator company, which is in Singapore. So the VC fund is essentially at this stage, right, which is our first fund, is an angel fund. So our angel investors in our private angel group invested in our fund, right, or invest in our fund. We have about 50 investors in our fund, and you'll be surprised to know that, especially for the recent fundraising that we did, for every 6 months we raise a little bit of money for the funds, right? For the fund, that's how we do it. It's very cyclical. Every 6 months we have a cohort accelerator, and we raise some funds, and then we deploy those funds into that particular accelerator cohort, right? So we have the fund.
Okay.
And what I was going to say is that, especially recently, a good percentage of the investors and the funds that came into our fund is from Canada, right?
Alhamdulillah.
Half of the world away, or the other side of the world. MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. So my question is now you can raise from Canada as well.
Yeah, so we are a private angel group, so anyone can
Okay.
apply.
Oh, it's a private angel group. Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the minimum ticket for investors? What is the minimum ticket for investors?
25,000 US dollars. Yeah. First you're gonna be a member, and then there's a simple process. There's no cost to being a member, but there's a process of interviewing and so on to gauge suitability. Yeah.
So this is for those who pay attention. This is for angel investors who want to support the Muslim startup ecosystem. Hasan.VC, they were saying they have this private angel round, and like we are not affiliated with them. I'm just going to be honest. Like we're not taking any money, so I'm just helping Hasan.VC to promote their thing. So I just want to be very, because this thing's very important. On the thing we have to tell them.
Sure.
I have no affiliation with Umar. I'm just inviting to a podcast, I believe. And do your due diligence. But if you guys think you don't, check it out. If you're an investor, figure out, and we Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. Because one thing I want to tell, that if you're investing in this, remember something, that the money you give, you have to make sure who you're going to invest in. But if you end up, imagine investing and supporting the next great startup, you can not only make money, you can make a lot of good impact as well.
Exactly.
Right? So alhamdulillah, that's good. So that's for the angel investors, right? A minimum 25K they can join. And tell us the process on the other end. How does it work?
So I'll just tell a short story, right? I feel it's so important that this fund came into existence because we had angels who were investing deal by deal basis, right? And when Hassan was just starting, I met an old friend in Singapore who wanted to be one of the early investors in Ethis 10 years ago, but it didn't happen. Today he runs a fund, right? $2 billion fund. So and he's very into supporting the Ummah, right? So when I met him, I thought, I'm sure I'll get this guy as my investor. And he said, Umar, I've invested in 3 startups. I lost all my money. I'm never investing in startups again. So when I heard that, I'm like, someone who I know wants to and doesn't want to do it because he was burnt. And losing money from investing in 3 startups is expected, right?
Yep.
He didn't have that mindset. He didn't know. So the VC fund plays an important role to help our angel group to diversify. Yeah. The fund targets to invest in 40 to 50 startups over time, right? So far we haven't announced the recent investments, but we have around 25 startups right now, alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So Mike, go ahead.
Yeah. So on the other side, right? You wanted to know about the other side?
Yes.
So every 6 months or so, right? 4 to 6 months, we run a virtual accelerator program. It's full pure online for 2 months. Very intensive, right? Very, very intensive. I think that's one feedback we receive, that founders are very busy, right? But it is very intensive, necessarily so. We do have the LMS, so it's recorded, so busy founders can watch it in their own time. But of course, we want participation, right? Now, so every 4 to 6 months, we run a program. We have 30 to 40 startups in every cohort. At the end of the program, we organize a demo day, which is physical, right? And we have investors coming to listen to your pitch and all that. And we, as a fund, will then make offers to some of those who graduate from the program. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's just how we do it. So we plan to do 4 cycles. We just completed a second cycle. Every
Alhamdulillah.
cycle, we invest in 10 to 15 startups to accumulate 40 to 50 startups, inshallah, in the fund. Yeah, so that's how it works.
So,
And
no,
yeah,
that's
go ahead.
good. So that reminds me the YC model in a similar way, a bit
Very
similar
simple.
way, right? So on YC, what they do, they also invest from their own funding. You do the same as well?
Yes. So the VC fund has the angel funding, right? So that fund is what invests in the startups that graduate from the accelerator.
Gotcha. So is it something you can you're comfortable to share the how much you guys invest, or is something you're not comfortable to share at this moment?
Yeah, I mean it's all on the website as well, right?
Okay.
Our typical ticket size, because we come in pre-seed mainly, is $60,000. It can go
Okay.
up to $250,000. Yeah.
So 60K, and for the YC, they take about 7%. You also take something like this?
Yeah,
Percentage-wise?
around there. Correct.
Okay.
And so for us, I guess a little bit different is that the value proposition we provide is we are very hands-on, right? Especially in the early days, right? We try our best to provide whatever value, depending on the founder and the startup, where they are, what they need, and what they want from us, right? So a lot of them come in. I think the first main draw so far, the attraction is 2 things. One is they want to be part of this community, right? They want to be a founder in this growing global Muslim founder community and investor community, right? Because there's not many of that happening.
That's
So
true.
much of it happening. Yeah. So Alhamdulillah,
That's true.
we have a strong community of more than 100 founders right now, right?
Alhamdulillah.
The second
That's
thing is,
beautiful.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. And the second thing is we also have content and insights from our trainers, our speakers, other founders that focus on not just the commercial aspect, but combines it or rather frames it with the Islamic worldview, right?
I love that. I love that part.
Last week, I was sitting down with 2 founders from Indonesia, a couple who were Muslim and visibly practicing Muslim, wife wearing hijab, and I asked them, what did you learn or what do you like from our accelerator program? And they said, we've been doing business for so long, we never saw it as ibadah.
That's the biggest thing. This is the biggest thing, because they think the ibadah is just when they go to masjid, when they do siyam and you do dhikr. But the biggest part of our life is work. Why
Exactly.
we are missing this? 100%. 100%. Beautiful.
Alhamdulillah, we're so happy to have this opportunity to share that, and hopefully we can get you more involved also in sharing some information, some insights.
Inshallah. So let me ask you a couple of questions. So, is there any requirements for startups to join? Like, is there any specific areas you invest, like tech, finance, this and that, or you're open?
Yeah. So right now, we have a Southeast Asia focus, right? So you don't need to be a Southeast Asian company. You can be from anywhere. But the reason why we have that focus is because this is our home ground, right? This is where we have our strength of networks, relationships, experience, and all that. So we know we can help you if you want to enter this market, or if you're in this market, we know we can bring significant value, right? So that's one
I
thing.
see.
Yeah. So that's a very important aspect of things. Sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah. So that was a question. Like, so in terms of the area, geographic area,
Oh,
you
the
focus
area,
on. Like, if someone from Canada comes right now with an
Yeah.
idea, is this something you guys invest or no? Like a Canada startup from Canada.
We can. Yeah, our mandate is global. But as I mentioned, we have more strength in this part of the world, right?
Gotcha.
And in terms of valuations and expectations of valuations and costs, right? $60,000, you can do a lot in Indonesia and Malaysia,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
But in Canada, maybe not so much, right?
That's a good point, actually. That's a very good point. So another question, Omar. So when you are selecting your startups, is it Muslim founders, or is it Muslim founders and they're targeting the Muslim market? You see, sometimes it could be a Muslim founder, they can serve everybody. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Exactly.
But sometimes they are targeting the specific Muslim market. How is it in your case? Or it doesn't, maybe it's both. I'm just asking a question.
So we can invest in, of course, in any people of any faith, right? Startups, founders of any faith, any background, Muslims, non-Muslims. Naturally, a large majority of our founders are Muslims. Sometimes there are teams where Muslims and non-Muslims as co-founders, right?
Mhm.
So it's internally, of course, you want to support the Ummah, but in terms of mandate and scope, we can invest in anyone.
Yep.
And the red line is it cannot be haram, right? Everything that the business
Yes.
does could be halal. We
Sure.
look at even things like the finance and all that, which may not matter too much for early stage, but as they grow larger, they need to know what's halal and not. So it must be halal. We prefer strongly social impact and more sustainable companies, right? Startups. So within that wider scope of everything that's not haram, which is very wide,
Yep.
there is that smaller subset of Muslim focus or halal lifestyle, whatever you call it, right? Islamic economy startups. And that is where I guess we have an additional unique advantage because we know the stakeholders in the halal space, especially in this part of the world. And right now, for example, we have shares in 3 different Quran apps, right? So we have a bird's eye view of all 3, and we can help the 3 to work with each other in that sense,
Beautiful.
So like halal
Beautiful.
travel, we have a good view of halal travel because not only do we see new concepts, but we also have companies that we invest in that space. Yeah.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I just looked at the hour. It's been about an hour since we've been talking. It's also support time. I want to be really mindful. Look, I'm going to ask one last question with it. Look, is there a question I should have asked, I didn't ask you? Or maybe you want to mention how can I help you from where I am? Or how can the Ummah can help you to even further your cause? So I believe it's a good cause. Tell us how can we help you? Inshallah.
All right. I think maybe I'll just go a little bit more fundamental in terms of mindset, right? Because we deal with investors and founders. Both are equally important, and they overlap, right? Some founders become investors, some investors become founders, right?
Yep.
And that's great. So I think the main thing that Muslims need to accept is, or to try, is to not be attached to money and to business. When I say not be attached means, and that's something that I wrote on LinkedIn recently, right? That was the main learning from one of my recent older downfalls, right? As investors, you invest with a purpose, and then you leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As founders, it's the same. You invest your time, your effort, your energy, your brain power, your community, your networks, and then you leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think that's very, very important. And sometimes we tend to forget that. And I just want to remind myself and all of you here also, especially now that it's Ramadan, that everything we do with the right intention and right effort and tawakkul. Inshallah, it will be great for everybody.
That's a beautiful reminder. With that one, I'm going to be mindful of your time because, as I was saying in the beginning, he is in the 12 hours ahead of me right now. It's sort time. I don't want to take more of his time. Umar, it's been a pleasure, brother, talking to you. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give tawfiq and success in what you're doing and give barakah, because I believe sincerely it's good. And if in a way or shape or form, if anybody who's listening who want to join you as an investor, maybe as a startup, or even myself, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, written for us, we work together, we will. But as I said, as always, I'm always open to working together and helping the Muslim ecosystem. That has been what we're doing last 10 years as from the marketing side and the tech side, etc. Alhamdulillah. And we will explore this. But right now, I want to let you go. Okay, you have your suhoor and enjoy the next day of Ramadan. We are in the blessed days. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our journey. In the end, we believe inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We all go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we go back, so we have beautiful stories, beautiful books in our hands by all the things we are doing. And hopefully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us Jannat al-Firdaus to you and to us, to all of us. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, brother. Wa alaikum salam.